Um, Good morning, Pennsylvania voters. I'm Brian McCrone with NBC 10 Digital here in Philadelphia. And with me is Lauren Mayk, NBC 10's political reporter. She's had a busy week, but first let me say Happy Earth Day, everyone. Lauren, Happy Earth Day, and it's been a wild week leading up to this Friday, especially in the Senate race here in Pennsylvania, the open Senate race, and both on the Democratic and the Republican side. We're going to touch a little bit on the governor's race as well, but let's talk with the Senate first. What's been going on there? You had a interesting story that we just ran about Mehmet Oz, one of the frontrunners in the Republican race. So catch us up a little bit on that.
Yeah, otherwise known as Dr. Oz. He is running in the Republican primary for Senate, and he was in our area this week in Bristol in Bucks County for an event there. So I went there to talk to him and to also talk to voters. And one of the things that we were interested in finding out was what the impact of President Trump's endorsement is, because President Trump, about a week and a half ago, I think now, maybe almost 2 weeks ago, endorsed Oz for Senate as his choice for the Republican primary. And so, the question has been, what impact will that have? Because Oz had not really been the front runner. It had been Dave McCormick and then Oz going at it sort of at the front of the pack there. And so we wanted to see what kind of impact this has. Obviously, former President Trump has a lot of supporters, and by putting his backing behind Oz, it certainly gets people's attention. And what we found was at this event in Bristol, it was a full house, but it wasn't necessarily packed with just all Oz supporters or all Oz fans. There were a lot of people there who are still checking him out, who are there to hear what he has to say and make a decision about whether or not they're going to vote for him. You see there a little piece of the package that I did on this that you can find and hear on our NBC10.com site. But as I was talking to these voters, a number of them told me that the Trump endorsement did convince them to go to the event. And there you see a guy in a Trump hat right there. He actually told me that he thought that this did not convince him all the way. He's still deciding. He listened to President Trump, but he thought maybe President Trump was trying to choose somebody who was going to win. But that voter is still making up his mind who he wants to vote for. And that was the case with a number of voters that I talked to who said that, the Trump endorsement got them to go to the event or convince them to give Oz a look, but it did not get them all the way to yes. That was basically up to Oz to do. And I did talk to a woman who was a big Trump supporter. She had a Trump pin on. She said she volunteered for the Trump campaign twice and both years, and said that by the end of that event yesterday, Oz had convinced her and that she was going to be voting for him. But there were a number of people who were still deciding. So that was interesting.
Yeah, we're about 4 weeks away, right? So the primary here in Pennsylvania is going to be May 17th. What, you said that they're going there, they're looking at that Oz. Are they're just on the fence, a lot of these voters?
Yeah. I mean, I asked them, well, who are you deciding between, thinking it might be just, between him and somebody else. And it wasn't like a two-person race for a lot of people. It was, they were just still looking at the field, still checking it out to see who they liked. And they had an open mind. So they're doing their research, they're listening to Oz and checking out the other candidates and wanted to hear what they have to say. Some of them have specific issues that were, that are important to them. But, and actually, interestingly, during that event, one woman stood up and actually asked Oz, because there was an opportunity for people in the audience to ask questions. She asked Oz, why are you better than the other candidates? Why? She said she was there because she loves President Trump, and said, why would he endorse you, and wanted to know from Oz. And actually the other people sort of jumped in to give their reasons why they liked Dr. Oz. There was a radio host there, and also Dr. Ben Carson, who you may remember was the HUD secretary under President Trump and also a former Republican presidential candidate.
Yeah, so Dr. Oz is in this race on the Republican side. There's another front runner is Dave McCormick. He's has a lot of money behind him, and he's also wealthy himself. There's a few other candidates. Just take us through the candidates on the Republican side. Just give us a little.
Yeah, well, and if you want to see them all, Brian, I'll give a little tease to our wall that we've taken over a wall in the newsroom here, and we've got some video on our website with me actually writing all of the candidates on the wall, and we're due for an update, I think, in at least one of the races. But yeah, Dave McCormick is a former hedge fund CEO who is running. He's put, I believe, $7 million of his own money into this race. That's of the last filing at the end of the quarter, at the end of March. And Oz himself has also put quite a bit of money. I think it was 2.8, a little more than 2.8 million this past quarter that he put in. And then he had put some other money in previously. And then you also have Kathy Barnett, who has raised quite a bit of money and also is getting quite a bit of support. She's from Montgomery County. She's local. And somebody mentioned her to me yesterday that was one of the candidates that they were also interested in. So she is running along with Jeff Bartos. He is from Montgomery County as well. He's a developer and a businessman, and he is running in this race. Interestingly, he is actually off the campaign trail right now because he had a medical procedure that did take him off the trail, but he said that he expects to be back shortly and that he'll be participating in a debate on Monday. So not a long time off the trail for him. And,
you did this. So I pulled up this. This was another package that we did, right? And this takes a little bit of a look at this money that you're talking about. There's a lot of money, but there's also outside money coming in. This is where it's really heating up now with these 4 weeks to go, right?
Yeah, and you can see there's big money on both sides, but it is a little bit different. On the Republican side, you've got self-funders, as they're called. You've got people who are very wealthy. You can put a lot of money into the race. Mehmet Oz, Dave McCormick, they're putting a lot of their own money into the race, which actually you see Kathy Barnett there. That's something that she has criticized, actually. And then on the Democratic side there in the blue, you see John Fetterman. He has raised the most out of anyone on the Democratic side. And Connor Lamb is a congressman from Pittsburgh. And then you see Malcolm Kenyatta. He's a state representative from Philadelphia. And you can see there the amounts that they have raised, and they have not put their own money into this race. This is all money that they've been raising from donors.
Yeah, it was pretty incredible. I saw him in a package that you did on John Fetterman. Was that earlier this week or last week? You
last week,
profiled
yeah.
John Fetterman. Yep. And so that was interesting in that I saw him in what looked like it was a hooded sweatshirt and some basketball shorts. So It's just fascinating to see the difference.
Oh, that wasn't the interview. That was actually, yeah, I know which one you're talking about. That was in that you'll see him in that outfit in that money package. And that was actually some video that we took over the weekend, last weekend. I believe that was last Saturday. He visited Plymouth Meeting and was speaking to people there. And actually, he was talking at one point about the amount of donors that have come into his campaign and the amount of money that they have helped him to raise. But I believe that's when he was wearing that outfit. He did have a suit on when I interviewed him last week at the Constitution Center.
Yeah, no, it's just that's right. So during your one-on-one, he had the somewhat normal political attire, but he is taking a different approach as he's campaigning across the state of Pennsylvania, right? I mean, you can just see it. That's what's on the Democratic side. He is the progressive. There's also a very strong candidate right out of Philadelphia, the state representative Malcolm Kenyatta, who's very progressive as well. So you have those two. So it looks like it's lining up. We also had a poll out last week as well from the reputable Franklin and Marshall College poll that showed that Fetterman has a very strong lead in this race on the Democratic side in that May 17th primary, which I imagine that is the sort of moderate Connor Lamb, the U.S. representative from out in Western Pennsylvania, really probably saw that and said, we got to get up and go here. We have to get this campaign going, right? Talk to me, because he's more the moderate establishment campaign, right? What's happening on that Democratic side that's like, in this primary?
Well, yeah, Brian, you sort of saw this play out last night. There was a Democratic debate in Harrisburg last night with John Fetterman, Connor Lamb, and Malcolm Kenyatta. And it's been very rare that we've seen all three of them on stage together. For example, I was at an event at the Constitution Center where I did that interview with John Fetterman last week. They all appeared at the Constitution Center, but they all appeared separately for separate turns on the stage to answer questions. This time they were all on the stage together. And in this debate, you could see Connor Lamb and Malcolm Kenyatta sort of both aiming at John Fetterman and criticizing things that he has said in the past, things that he has done in the past, and really jumping on him in real time as he made certain comments during the debate. At one point, the question was about where to start a wealth tax. What would be the income threshold where people would start paying a wealth tax if one were to be implemented? And Fetterman responded, well, you know it when you see it, and didn't give a specific answer. Well, both Connor Lamb and Malcolm Kenyatta, who are both legislators in Congress and in the state legislature, jumped on that and said, that's not the way legislation works. You can't put that in a bill. You have to have a number, and really sort of criticized him for that. And there was also a point where Malcolm Kenyatta specifically talked about that 2013 incident where Fetterman stopped a Black man. Fetterman had a shotgun, confronted this man who, after hearing gunshots, said he saw him running from the area. He was the mayor of Braddock at the time. And Malcolm Kenyatta was bringing this incident up again and trying to get Fetterman to say that he was sorry for it. And there was sort of some tension on stage between them there. And Fetterman did not end up saying that, but explained his side of what he says transpired, which was the same thing that a similar explanation to when I talked to him about it last week, which again you can watch on our website.
Yeah, this is that poll. These are the poll results we were talking about. It has this Fetterman is at 41% of voters that were polled earlier this month versus Connor Lamb, who is at 17%. So, yeah, I mean, this is what plays out in these primaries, right? You have, at least in the last couple decades, these primaries have turned into the moderates in the parties have a uphill fight to get past the primary and into the general election, right? So the general election in Pennsylvania will be in November. And so the big fight now for moderates like Representative Lamb is get past the primary, right? That's like the big hurdle here, because these primaries tend to pull out the more liberal or the more conservative sides of the two parties, right? That's how it's been playing out.
Yeah, it can. It doesn't always, but it can. And interestingly, John Fetterman has run for Senate before. He ran previously and didn't win. And in that year, the state party actually stepped in and backed Katie McGinty. And he didn't, and Fetterman did not win that race. In this case, the state party is not stepping in at all, not endorsing a candidate. And Fetterman is doing better. He's also a lot more well-known now than he was then. He's obviously the sitting lieutenant governor. So he's a lot more well-known than he was back then. But yeah, Brian, it can certainly happen that way. And it is something that parties think about. It is something that sort of the party leadership and the county chairs and stuff, they think about, who can win in a general election. But sometimes they have sort of control of pushing things one way or the other, like I said, with an endorsement, and sometimes they don't.
Yeah, we got a comment on Facebook from a viewer, John Foley. Thanks for writing. He said he basically laid out what you heard at the Oz event. He said up in Bucks County. He said, I wasn't for Oz, but with President Trump's endorsement, I believe Oz could flip his Rhino title. I guess Rhino being Republican in name only, to American Patriot, and we need to meet with Oz. Well, he said, I need to meet with Oz before I decide any further. So
yeah,
right in line.
It's very interesting. I think there was this question was President Trump going to endorse, and then that would be it? Everybody who supported President Trump would support Dr. Oz, and it hasn't happened that way. Now, it doesn't mean he's not going to get those people, but he's having to do the work. He's having to convince people, sometimes in person in these events. And you can see the value. I thought about this yesterday as I was there. My photographer and I were actually talking about it, that you can see really the value of these events for these candidates, and for voters, to really get a chance to see somebody in person, to ask questions. I mean, this was not a rally where he just gave a speech. He actually, had people ask questions from the audience. They had microphones, and that's been the case at both of his events that I've been to. And so you can see the value. The question is, will he or other candidates be able to do enough of those events in enough places to reach as many voters as they need?
I was just going to ask you that. Are those sort of voter interactions and voter events happening more and more? Are the Democrats and Republicans, both in the Senate race and the governor's race, are they concentrating on southeastern Pennsylvania in particular? How is it? What do you see happening over the next month?
From what I can gauge, and there's a lot of candidates. They're in different places. And I ran into a candidate the other day, and I said, "Where are you going? What parts are you going to be in?" And he said, "I'm everywhere. We're everywhere." And that's sort of how you have to be in Pennsylvania, especially on the Republican side, because there's not just sort of one concentrated area. On the Democratic side, you can do a lot of things in southeastern Pennsylvania, and then a lot of things over in the Pittsburgh area, and sort of amass a lot of votes by concentrating in those areas. That's really not the case for Republicans. But there's a lot of travel involved in these in these statewide races in Pennsylvania. I would expect that we're going to see more events over the next 3 weeks, and more opportunities for voters to interact with the candidates, because we're getting down to the wire here. And there, from the polls that we have seen, and there have not been a ton, we've still seen quite a big chunk of voters who are undecided, who are kind of waiting. They've got busy lives. They're doing their own thing, and it sometimes it is not until the last couple weeks or days of a campaign that people make a decision. Now, the other factor here in Pennsylvania is that people can start voting earlier than election day because of the mail-in ballots and that option for them. So there's some pressure for these candidates, knowing that at any moment, people could, in that last period, last 2 weeks, at any moment they could see a TV ad or hear something or go somewhere, come home and decide who they're voting for, and then mark that off on the ballot that's sitting on their kitchen table. So it's not like that final message always comes down to the night before election day.
Yeah, well, you talked about the ballot, the mail-in ballot, which has been a huge issue in Pennsylvania and in other states across the country, but it was a huge issue back in 2020. We were in the midst of the pandemic, and President Trump was running for re-election against Joe Biden, and Pennsylvania was trying out this massive new, almost universal, right, mail-in balloting for the first time. It had been
no excuse mail-in balloting.
No excuse mail-in balloting. It had been voted in by a Republican-controlled legislature a year a year and a half earlier, but this was the first big test. Just happened to be a presidential election amid a pandemic. So there was a lot of controversy and just second guessing about a lot of things. You spoke with the Secretary of State of Pennsylvania, who is in charge of elections, right, statewide, and sort of implements these statewide initiatives at the elections and at polling places. Tell me a little bit about your interview.
Yeah, and this is also posted on our website that that you can take a look at. And we talked about first of all, we did talk about mail-in balloting because Act 77 was the law that you're talking about that was put into place. That was actually struck down by a court, and there has been an appeal and what's called a stay to basically keep the rule in place while it's going through the courts. And so, I asked her about that and whether that could impact things and whether, this option really was going to be available for people and whether they should trust that their votes will be counted. And she said that, those votes will be counted as long as they are in there by the deadline on election day, regardless of that court decision. And you can see I'm sitting in the same little digital room as I'm interviewing her there. We also talked about security around the election. This is the first high profile election that Pennsylvania has had since January 6th, since 2020, and the counting that we saw at the convention center in Philadelphia and sort of everything that happened outside the convention center. There were even arrests out there. Right. So, I asked her about that. She said that, they work with, state and local law enforcement and also Homeland Security, and they discuss things. I asked her if there were any reports of or concerning information that had come to her about any threats, and she would not comment on that. But she did say that they do work with law enforcement to put precautions in place and to deal with anything. And we also talked about just sort of what voters can expect after the election, because we saw in 2020 that with all those mail-in ballots, it did take a while for results to come in. I think it was Saturday before enough ballots were in that news organizations started feeling comfortable calling the race where it was, that they had enough information on that. And that was several days after the election, which of course was on Tuesday. And I asked her, how long is it going to be this time before we get results? And she said it should be quicker than in 2020. She wouldn't commit to how long that's going to be, but she said quicker than 2020. But they still do have the rule in the counties that some of the counties have wanted to have changed, which is that they can't start processing those ballots until election day. So even if your ballot is in, the Friday before election day, they can't, process that and put it on the stack until the morning of election day. That's when they can start doing all that.
Right. So those two, if you're a Democrat or a Republican registered in Pennsylvania, you're going to be able to vote in both of those races on May 17th.
Yep.
Independent voters can still go and answer some ballot questions, but they'll have to wait till November to vote for the party's nominees that get elected, that get nominated on May 17th.
Unless they want to change their registration to Democrat or Republican, which I believe they have until May 2nd to do that. So if they want to participate that way, they can do that.
Right. There you go. So yeah, just a little, there's been some, this is our decision 2022 page where we're tracking all of this we've been tracking it. Lauren and I have been on this for months now because the candidates decided to jump in pretty early in these two races, and you can catch all the news that you need. You just jump on here at any point throughout the weeks leading up to this May 17th primary. There's a ton of, there's the daily stories that are happening. There is, I want to show this to our viewers as well. We have these two little widgets on here. You can put in your address, and you don't need to put in your name or any identifying other than just, you can put in any address, honestly, and find what district you're going to be voting in. So you can also find interesting information about the congressional districts that are also, all 17 of Pennsylvania's congressional districts are on the ballots this year too, right? So that's a little more, that's that next level below the top of the line, governor's race and U.S. Senate race. The congressional races are, you can put in your address here, and this will show you it will spin out the district that you're going to be voting in and who's going to be on your ballot. So that's kind of what we've been doing there. We built that out for viewers and prospective voters. We also have on this page, we split it up now. Lauren's been diligently reaching out and trying to get everyone that she can who's running in these races. As we've alluded to, there's quite a few people running in the U.S. Senate race and also the governor's race. And so as you can see, we have this candidate interviews. We have them all pulled together. She just did the John Fetterman interview. There's a Dave McCormick interview from a few weeks ago now. Yeah. So there's everyone there that we've interviewed, and she's continuing to track down those candidates. And so please, everyone, you can just pop in there, and this page is continually refreshed. And that is where we're housing all of our electoral coverage this year. And we'll have a busy, even after the May 17th primary, it'll be November. We'll be gearing back up for that and really honing in on these. So anything that we can, what are you expecting now in the next, just to sort of wrap up for today and look forward to next week and even just ahead to the next month? What do you expect? Anything?
I mean, I think it's going to be busy. I'm expecting to see more candidates. Like I said, visiting different parts of the state, soon people will start to be able to get their ballots, and we'll see that process starting as well. So we'll try to keep you up to date on both what's happening on the campaign side and just the election side, as Brian said, to help give voters information on just the nitty gritties of getting it done and getting those ballots in or showing up on election day.
Yeah, well, speaking of getting it done, you got to get out there back on that campaign trail and meet up with some people today. So thanks a lot for taking the time. Pennsylvania voters, remember the big May 17th primary is coming up in Pennsylvania. And as Lauren just alluded to a minute or so ago, there is still some time to, if you wanted to register for a political party and get in there and cast a ballot for their nominees in that May 17th primary, or if you want to wait it out and stay independent, which there's a few million in Pennsylvania that do, then you'll be voting in that November election. But we will be checking back in every week as we move forward in this huge Decision 2022 election year in Pennsylvania. Thanks again. I'm Brian McCrone, and Lauren Mayk, our political reporter. Thanks a lot for joining us, and we'll talk to you again next week.